So I'm Nick Parker. I've been around the industry for almost 30 years, actually. 30 years next April. I started at Nintendo, launched the SNES for 3 years, and then went to Sony PlayStation. I was on the board of Sony Europe for 6 years for PlayStation 1 and PlayStation 2. Then went to Infogrames in France for about 18 months, which became Atari, and then set up my own consultancy in 2002. And started out in strategic planning and worked with quite a few of these guys. These are the primary early clients that I had. And since 2013, when I moved more into the financial and investment side of things, helping small businesses raise capital and working with investors and VCs, especially VCs and also high net worths investing in the industry, I've facilitated, or actually actively have raised £12 million since 2013. So today we're going to talk about, really, actually, I think, everybody who's been involved in this so far, we're going to cover off more or less every point that there is on financing and how to find finance. So it's a pretty good lineup of speakers, and I'm going to hopefully kind of fill in some of the gaps here. I have to say that it's a tough business we're in. There may be more devices out there, people buying more consoles, more smartphone usage, Steam membership. However, the new users seem to tend to want the same games. If you look at the top 10 sellers over the last 3 or 4 years, they at least half of the games, or maybe a third to half of the games, depending on the platform, will be games that we've been going for years, and they're perennial top 10 sellers. And because they're good games, anybody coming into the market wants to play those great games. And supply outstrips demand. There are more games that games want. If you're talking hundreds of thousands of games on mobile devices. You're talking thousands of games on console and on Steam. And there's certainly more games than games want. So it's a tough competition. And so most games don't really enjoy any exposure or go viral. Or they sit there, and you'll be surprised or worried that actually the majority of studios don't survive because they have no business strategy or business model vision. They don't have any pitch or documentation or understanding of finance. They're mainly good at what they're doing, and that is creativity and technology, but not necessarily good on the business side. And they can't negotiate a publishing route. Sales and marketing these days we thought was going to be great when we moved over to digital downloading and digital streaming of games. We thought that the democratization of publishing for all developers would be a good thing. However, a lot of developers try to ignore this or don't really understand how to get their product to market. And as I said, most development studios close down after the first game. If you can't generate enough cash flow out of the first game, then you're not going to be able to be around to make the second game. And you need to make obviously the right return of investment when you start to do that. And I must say, on business models and on understanding a business plan, which is what I do a lot of, is writing business plans for developers, is that you don't have to attempt to try to be, a major developer, the household name developer. If your business plan is to generate hundreds of thousands of pounds a year in profit rather than millions of pounds, and so be it. That's what you want, and that's your goal in life. That's fine. So that's okay. Obviously, if you've got investors involved, as we were talking about before, who have an equity stake in the business, they'll be looking for far faster growth than maybe you aspire to. So what type of finance do you need? Well, as we talked about before, what kind of finance is it? Is it for projects, or is it for business growth? And you need to identify what you'll want to do with your business or with your project. It could be on a very small basis in terms of the finance you require and what it's for. And how much do you think you need? Please don't be shy, because I often find that the developers never ask for enough. They go along and they say, well, 200,000, that should be fine. 200,000, please. But investors want to see the business last. They want to see it growing on. They want to be on that journey with you to grow the business. They don't want to be in and out quickly. They don't want to have to go back to the market quickly to raise more funds. So they want you to be demanding and ambitious about the amount of money that you require. Obviously the stage of the business and what are the financials. Are you early stage or are you later stage? This will impact on the type of investors that will be coming in. And we talked about the early stage investors who could be high net worths who want to invest maybe sort of 50,000 because of the tax incentives that they can get now, especially in the UK. or they may be later stage VCs, and then eventually maybe private equity if you get that big. And is the management receptive to active investors? Are they going to make board seats available? I've worked with a number of businesses who want the money, but they don't want anybody to tell them how to run their business, and so they're non-receptive. And VCs don't really like that. VCs don't necessarily want to interfere with the business. After all, you are the experts, but they certainly would like to feel that they can add value in terms of the contacts they have, and in terms of maybe helping run the business and corporate governance. And also dilution of your shareholding. A lot of startups have management who maybe have over 50% of the business each. So they, you might have two individuals with 100% of the business. And they're thinking, well, actually, I want to keep on to this. I don't want to dilute too much. And, as I always say, I'd rather have 5% of a 10 billion company than 50% of a £1 million company. So you've got to look forward. You've got to look at your intentions for the business and growing that business. And so, although you've got to be careful about your valuations and your shareholding and everything, but you really need to think that maybe dilution is going to be inevitable in some cases, but it's not such a bad thing if that's going to lead to significant growth of the business. So the forms of finance. Okay, so we've got banks. I know the Barclays have been on already, and they're starting to open up and offering some great products in the market. But most banks tend to look at you like an Alsatian watching television. They kind of don't really get it, and you shouldn't necessarily start with a bank. And then you've got lending vehicles for production finance. So this would be for project-based type of investments, where usually debt. You might set up a separate little business attached to yours, like a subsidiary, but it would be an SPV. So you might have a special purpose vehicle for each game that you're developing, so that you can isolate any risk amongst those SPVs. Loads of government going on at the moment. If you take, for example, you've got local development agencies around the country, VGTR and R&D tax credits, video games tax relief and R&D tax credits. There are a lot of organizations around who offer security on these tax credits and tax reliefs in terms of advances throughout the year. So definitely worth exploiting those. From high net worth individuals, those businesses, those investors who need to have some form of tax incentive to be able to invest. There's EIS and SEIS. SEIS is for early stage, and I'm going to look at these in a little bit more detail. Innovate UK, they were given about 750 million from the government last year. They were highly active in the games industry, offering loans and grants in this financial year, and they're just waiting now to see what the government is going to be handing out in the next financial year for them to open up again investment in the industry. And you've got, as I said, you've got local sort of initiatives like the Northern Powerhouse initiatives. You've got industry and corporate loans and grants like Epic, the Epic Mega Grant. Now, basically, Epic wants you to use the Unreal Engine, and they're incentivizing developers to use Unreal Engine or use Unreal Engine for part of their work via the Mega Grant. As we said, angel investors, the seed round or pre-revenue finance with or without equity. You've also got crowdfunding. Venture capital, A round, and subsequent rounds of equity ownership. Now, I know that Matt said that venture capital can come in at early stage. I mean, after all, that is what they were devised for initially in the early days of venture capital. Venture capital was an early stage investor. However, most of the VCs that you'll come across, unless you're very lucky or maybe you find something on the west coast of the States, tend to be a little bit risk averse, and they work on what I call the 3 and 3 basis, in that they're looking for companies with maybe a 3 million turnover, and they're looking for themselves not to invest less than 3 million. So you can get hurdles into the kind of VCs that you'll talk to. So there are specialist VCs out there that are worth approaching. I have access to a high number of VCs, warm VCs as Matt called them. And then later stage, you've got private equity and hedge funds. These are businesses that are probably going to take over your business and drive it forward into something, which has incredible value, but you won't have much control of it after that. And then you've got the payment in kind type, which are expensive loans, quite risky over a fixed period, especially city lenders. I know some developers who are further down the road have used this on a tactical basis. You've got VCTs, which are trusts, which are a little bit like SEIS and EIS. They offer investors tax incentives. And then finally, if you do IPO, then you can go to some London City based, not necessarily London City, but they could be usually are London City based, such as Liberum for IPOs. So there you go. There's a whole stack of sources of investment there available to you. And as everybody's insinuating, certainly this last year, we've seen an incredible growth in the activity of investors, M&A activity, and exits and through IPO. So SEIS and EIS, really, you've got two stages of this. As you start a business up, what you should try to do is just cover yourself here, because you want to get hold of money from wherever it's from. And normally that may come from a high net worth, somebody who's got a lot of money and they're looking to invest in the industry. They've heard about the industry, and somebody says, "Oi, have you heard of Studio X? The smart studio, a couple of guys who have come out of a larger publisher or studio. They set up a business. They've got this great new IP, and they need some investment." And then that investor goes, "Okay, I'll look at that. I'll look at it a bit more closely." And they will want to invest through the SEIS and EIS schemes. Now, the SEIS is a seed enterprise investment scheme where you as a developer can take up to 150K maximum from it. There are obviously some rules and stipulations around you, so you can't have assets more than 200,000. You've got to be less than 25 employees, and you've got to be 2 years or less old in terms of the length of the business. And then once you've got your 150K from SEIS, you can start to move on to EIS, and EIS allows you to seek investment for larger amounts. Again, there are obviously a number of conditions, and there's also a maximum amount per year that any investors can invest in you. To get started on this, you need to seek advance assurance, which is you've basically form filling exercise, which you fill in the form, you send it off to HMRC, and you have to prove certain things like that the business is risky. These are all new things that have come in the last year, where it's because they wanted to stop people from setting up businesses, getting their friends to invest in them, so that cash was just going around or being laundered. So they increased the hurdles for seeking advance assurance for SEIS and EIS by making sure that there is certainly a risk associated with it for the investor. So it's a very important thing. If you're a young business starting up and you're looking for finance eventually or straight away, then you need to get advance assurance, and you can go onto the HMRC website and download documents to be able to send off. And depending on what's going on with HMRC, I know it's very busy at the moment, but you might be lucky and you might get a response within about a month. If not, it'll be much longer. For the investor, on the SEIS side, they can 50% of the investment is up to 100,000 per annum. So although you get 150,000 in, an investor can only invest 100,000 of his money over the year on SEIS, but he gets a 50% tax relief on his profits of investments for that year. No capital gains tax. He gets inheritance tax relief. Investments are held for over 2 years. On the enterprise scheme, he gets 30% income tax relief. And I don't want to get into too much detail on this on the investor side, because we're talking about really what developers are doing. But it's all up there on the HMRC .gov's website. Okay. Then, oh yes, I was going to say that if you have a knowledge-intensive company, which I'll explain in a minute, you can get more investment from 5 million maximum on any EIS to 10 million. And for the investor, they can get a 30% income tax relief for cost up to 1 million. But if they're investing in knowledge-intensive companies, they can get income tax relief up to 2 million. So if you want to get more, then you need to know if you are a knowledge-intensive company. And knowledge-intensive companies are those companies that basically heavily into R&D, and they've got qualified individuals working on that R&D. They have spent an amount of their overall operation costs on research and development or innovations at least either 10% in each of the 3 years before the investment, or 15% in any one of the 3 years before the investment. You'll be carrying out work to create intellectual property, and you expect the majority of your companies or groups businesses will come from this within 10 years. Or you have 20% of your employees carrying out research and development when you receive the investment of 3 years after. These employees must have relevant master's or higher degrees. So if you're knowledge-intensive companies, you can basically source more money out of high net worth individuals, or, and I must state this, is not just high net worth individuals. There are large institutions and institutional investors and VCs who will invest on an EIS or SEIS basis, primarily EIS. And a lot more VCs are actually stipulating that businesses have to be have advanced assurance and be seeking EIS investment and be compliant to be able to do that. So it's worth, as I said, doing this. On financial considerations, as I said, you could if it's relevant for your business, you have maybe a number of projects, you might want to ring fence those and set up SPVs for them, which are basically can be LPs, limited companies of any form of business structure, legal business structure. You're going to have to get into documentation, articles and shareholders agreement, finances. There's certainly on, in equity deals, you're going to have these documentation in place. A cap table, which basically lists those investors, is a light form of more formal means of identifying who the shareholders are in your business. And then you've got the legal side of it, the regulatory aspects of investment. With SEIS and EIS, you've got to be careful because it comes in SEIS, the 150K that you can raise is part of de minimis payments from the year from other government sources. So you could, and local sources. So you've got to make sure that you haven't been raising money elsewhere at the same time. And if you're going to raise SEI and EIS, then you have to start on SEIS first. You can't raise SEIS after you've raised EIS. You have to prove that there's risk, as I said before. They must see that the business is risky, and also there could be constraints on the company to maintain EIS, SEIS qualifying status. So when you go to raise money, maybe through debt, you have to make sure that you are not breaking any rules that you've had when the company originally applied for EIS and SEIS funding. So yeah, that's really it. Where do you find these investors? Well, if you go to that website there, which is www.financesfundamentallygames.com, there is a list, and this is from fundamentallygames.com, who are advisors on certain aspects of building games and development. And there is a straightforward list there of many types of investors and companies, named companies, with website links to them. And it's not a bad general source, actually. It was quite welcome when it was set up. So have a look at that. And that's it. So my website, my email address, is nick@parkerconsulting.biz. I'm here to help you build business plans to act. I'm an NED on a number of companies, assisting with their growth and corporate governance. And I, as I said, facilitate deals. So I work with the legal side of things and accountants and put together the paperwork to be able to secure funds. So thank you very much.